Okay, hi everyone, welcome back, and in this update we are going to check out Zebec's price chart and see what is happening in the short term. And a spoiler alert, I think everything is actually going according to the bullish play, at least at the moment. But before we get into all that good stuff, we are going to talk about two very important announcements from Zebec. And in case you're not really checking their Twitter, or let's say you're not really active on social media, you should know that recently Zebec announced a new partnership with GhostWare, and this, in my view, is actually pretty important if you look at what they are trying to build. You see, Zebec wants to become a real payment infrastructure, and in order to achieve that goal, they need two very important things. Number one is going to be speed, and number two is privacy. Solana, okay, already gives them the speed part, but the privacy part, unfortunately, has always been the missing piece in here, and that is exactly where GhostWareOS comes in clutch. So, question, what is actually happening in here when you want to know more about the details? You see, GhostWareOS is being integrated directly into Zebec's settlements layer, and this is the part of the system where transactions get finalized on chain. Solana is absolutely fast, do not get it twisted, but it is also fully transparent, meaning every single payment from who sent it to who received it, even the amount, they all can be seen by anybody. And for normal users, that may not necessarily be that much of a big deal. And by normal users, by the way, we are talking about people like you and me. However, for businesses, this is actually a bit of a deal breaker. I mean, think about it. Let me give you an example. Let's say you own a company. You don't really want your competitors to see what you are paying to your supplier, how much volume are you moving each week, and maybe even how your treasury wallets are behaving. Even payroll data ending up on a public blockchain is actually kind of a privacy issue for you. So, without privacy, I think it is very much fair to say that no serious company is going to ever use on-chain payments for real business activity. Now, GhostWareOS actually solved this by adding private routing, encrypted relays, and wallet level metadata protection. Essentially, in simpler terms, the payment still settles instantly on Solana, but the sensitive information in here, like for example, let's say who is paying who for what, they all going to get hidden or encrypted, and the blockchain still confirms the transaction here. Okay, it's very important to understand that, but the details in here are not really exposed to the entire world, which is actually quite nice. Now, the main goal here is actually quite straightforward. Zebec wants to offer on-chain payments that feel safe enough for real companies, and they are basically trying to combine the performance of DeFi with the privacy standards that traditional finance actually expects from them. And if they manage to pull this up, okay, this is, in my view, going to, in the future, potentially and hopefully open doors to bigger business opportunities and hopefully much higher volume transactions, which is exactly what Zebec needs if they want the ZBCN token to matter in the mid to long term. Okay, none of what we are saying actually affects the chart in like very short term. These are fundamental news, and if you are a fair value investor, I think you should pay attention to these types of news and events very much. Now, let's talk about the second partnership in here, which is Zebec teaming up with Hypernative. And if the GhostWare integration was about fixing privacy for businesses, okay, this one is all about fixing compliance for regulators and institutions. Basically, Zebec is trying to show that they are able to offer privacy without really turning into a black box that is in the future and down the line going to create a lot of headaches and mainly, I would say, probably a whole lot of compliance issues. Now, Hypernative in here is going to bring real-time threat protection and AML monitoring into Zebec's system, and every payment that is going to move through the platform can be checked for suspicious patterns using artificial intelligence, on-chain data, and even off-chain signals. And instead of reacting after something bad happens, okay, with this partnership, the system is going to be able to catch issues before they are going to cause some big problems. And that is actually the kind of things that banks and enterprises actually want when they are dealing with large amounts of money, which is really nice. Now, The interesting part in my view is that Zebec is right now openly talking about meeting global standards, including OFAC, which is for sanction compliance, and also ISO for security frameworks. Because when a crypto project mentions these names directly, okay, it usually, not in all cases, but definitely usually in my view means that they are aiming for regulated users, not just DeFi DJs. They want governments, corporates, and fintech companies to treat Zebec like real financial infrastructure, not like necessarily an experiment running on a fast blockchain. And let's be honest, Zebec is not really that known to the crypto market. And I think where we are right now, I think right now we are somewhere around rank 150, which again, I think we can safely assume that Zebec is not really that much of a big project. So again, not a lot of people at the moment are paying attention to it. And if you are here, well, I think you might be an early investor, and I think you are going to end up making quite a bit of money. Now, here is my final point for this part of the video, and the main question in this part is this: why do we care about this, and why this actually matters for ZBCN token itself? You see, when you put these two partnerships together, okay, I think it is going to create a bit of a clear picture for you. I think these partnerships most likely mean that Zebec is trying to become a payment network that big players can actually use, and it's going to be, hopefully in the near future, enterprise ready. And if they are going to be able to pull this up and attract more and more institutional users, then okay, the demand for the network naturally is going to increase, and more volume, more settlements, and more activity usually is going to lead to a stronger valuation for the ZBCN token itself. And of course, nothing is guaranteed in here, but fundamentally and also structurally, I think this is actually a solid direction, and all we care about is that, are we in the right direction, and every single day, are we moving forward or not? If we are, okay, that's enough for me. I am going to just buy the dip as long as I get the chance to. So overall, for the conclusion, these updates in my view do show that Zebec is moving toward a more mature and regulated ecosystem, and GhostWare in here handles the confidentiality piece, and Hypernative covers the compliance and security side, and together they do actually make the platform more and more attractive for real world usage. And this is again just a single teeny tiny step toward larger adoption. But like everything in crypto market, the result actually depends on execution and whether businesses actually start using these features at a scale. And I do think in the future, because of these features specifically, we are going to attract more and more adoption. So overall, fundamental wise, I think these are actually the type of news that you should pay very much attention to if you are a long-term investor. And I think, again, we are definitely on the right direction with these partnerships. Now, having said all that, let's go on the live chart and see what is going on in the short term. And in the last 2 days, unfortunately, we got a bit of a move on the downside. However, if you watched the previous video when we were, I think, right around this area, we actually fully expected a bit of a move on the downside. But I believe in the previous video, I told you that from here, I don't actually mind if we end up getting a bit of a slow move up and then maybe another move on the downside in order to reach to this important level. And I had two very important reasons for why this level was actually a likely target for the coming move down in Zebec. Number one, this is actually a bit of a support area for us. And number two, which was a bit more important, you see, when we got this move on the upside, it actually happened a little bit too fast. And as a result of it, we did create a beautiful gap, which was also around this region between, let's say, 0.27 to about 0.28 of a cent. And since I believe gaps 95+% of the time are going to get filled, well, okay, from my POV, just made perfect sense to argue, you know what, Zebec is going to get to here, and then hopefully we are going to have a bit of a bounce. Now, considering that we didn't really get this pullback phase, and instead we just went straight down and reached to about this level, well, okay, I think now I should come up with two different counts. Scenario number one suggests the bottom is n. Actually, you know what? Before talking about this, let me tell you why overall in here, one way or the other, I'm actually quite optimistic in Zebec, and I'm really, really hoping that this is going to be it. The final low around, let's say, 0.21 cents. You see, my field of works specifically is Elliott waves. And if you want to argue in terms of Elliott waves, we're going to have our final low around this region, then okay, you should be able to find off of the lowest low in here a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave on the upside. Excuse me, there we go. This specific scenario is called an impulsive movement. Rules for it are, we should not have overlapping of the waves between wave 2 and 4, and in any kind of 5 wave or wave 3 should not be the smallest wave. And in terms of the sub waves, you know it, we're gonna have 5 wave up into wave 1, 3, and 5. By the way, these days, every single time that I make new Zebec updates, I get a lot of new viewers. So if you like the content, please give it a like. And if you want more content like this, definitely subscribe to the channel. We are going to, let's say, every 2-3 days, make a Zebec update. And ZBCN right now is like a key part of my channel. So again, we are going to continue talking about Zebec because I really do think this is going to appreciate over time quite a bit. Anyway, back to this 5 wave. For the subwaves, again, we're going to have 5 up into wave 1, 3, and 5. And for wave 2 and 4 for our corrections, we can consider different scenarios. Let's say in this instance, maybe WXY into 4 and then ABC into wave 2. Now, let's go on the live chart. Okay, so here is why I am quite optimistic in the short term. And I do think maybe this is going to be a wave 1 correction for 2, and then maybe like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to about possibly this point into wave 3, or maybe even here, doesn't really matter a whole lot, followed by a correction for 4 and another move on the upside, excuse me, into our wave 5. So the fact that I'm able to identify off of the lows and impulse up is definitely, in my view, an optimistic sign. But right in here, when we were having this move on the upside, I specifically said that's not really enough. I need to see a bit of a slow and choppy move down. And right now, I think you can sort of kind of argue this is a slow move on the downside. Why? Okay. Let's just measure this move down timing wise from this high to about the current point. So far, this is, by the way, on H1 time frame. The current move is taking us about 200 candlesticks. On the other hand, this move up actually happened in only 100 candles. So to me, this suggests that despite having way more than enough time in this phase, almost twice as much, bears actually are failing to pull the price all the way back down to these levels. And this, my friends, is a sign of a correction structure without a doubt. Now, having said that, okay, what's happening in the short term? You see, I think I might be able to argue this is like 1, 2, 3, 4, and another move down into wave 5. Followed by that, we may get a bit of a correction structure on the upside, maybe like an ABC. And then if you end up having like one more 5 wave on the downside in order to reach to about these levels. And if I want to give you a target, let's just use Fibonacci's for our analysis. There we go. A decent target can be somewhere around maybe the 78% level, about, let's say, 0.246 of a cent. And if we get there, again, it's not really going to be a deal breaker for us, as long as from these areas, we are going to witness a very strong bounce. And by that, you know it, I'm talking about a 5 wave in order to take the height of our B leg on a higher degree right in here. So one scenario suggests the current move up that we are having is just a correction structure, and after it's over, we can have another move down. But then we expect a massive bounce. Why a massive bounce? Because my primary scenario actually does suggest that in Zebec, hopefully, this is going to be on a higher degree, 5 wave up into 1 correction for wave 2. And what's next? Great move on the upside into wave 3, 4, 5. And you want to know that in terms of Elliott waves, wave 3 is actually known to be quite a strong and sharp move on the upside. Now, what about the other count? That's actually a bit more optimistic, and as opposed to having an impulse in here, I'm just going to argue this is a WXY, excuse me, probably a WXY to about this point in form of a double zigzag, and essentially this is actually our wave 1 correction for wave 2, but now to about this point as opposed to right around these areas. And okay, this scenario basically is suggesting that yep, from the current point we can have a massive jump into wave 3, 4, 5. Now personally, and again this is just my personal opinion, I'm always going to count on the worst case scenario between all the bullish ones to play out. So if it plays out, then okay, I'm not really going to be surprised at all. But on the other hand, if it doesn't play out and from this point instead we see some great moves on the upside, then okay, I'm just going to be pleasantly surprised. And I did actually buy quite a bit of Zebec right in here. And do not get me wrong, I'm absolutely 100% prepared to just buy more and more Zebec if we end up seeing lower prices. But again, if we don't, and from here we're gonna get a massive bounce, then okay, I'm happy with what I have. I'm just going to enjoy this massive move on the upside that we are going to get. So overall, do not get it twisted. At this point, we're just nitpicking, and maybe we are going to have like another move down, but that's not necessarily going to be a bad sign. Okay, it's very important to understand that. And I hope I explained everything well and you understood what is going on in ZBCN's chart. Anyway, if you found any value in my content, I would really appreciate if you like this video and consider subscribing to my channel and follow me on Twitter. And if you want more, maybe you want a complete analysis for your own specific crypto, or maybe you want to learn some decent TA in order to be able to make good money in the markets, you can become a member and ask me anything you want. And until the next update, I hope you have a wonderful time with your family and loved ones. Goodbye.